Good evening, everyone. We are so delighted that you are with us this evening. We have so much to cover and share with you about interpersonal neurobiology and the really amazing in-depth certificate that we put together for you through Portland Community College's Institute for Health Professionals. So thank you so much for joining us this evening, and we are going to go ahead and dive in. Going to cover just a few kind of ground rules regarding our shared space this evening. So Maureen, if you could advance to the next slide, please. This session is being recorded. We love seeing your faces. This is, after all, an interpersonal program. So if you are comfortable, please do keep your videos on so we know who we're talking to. We understand that that may not be possible, but especially during the Q&A, if you're comfortable doing that while asking your questions, we'd really appreciate that. Until we get to the Q&A, though, we will ask everyone to keep their microphones muted so that everyone can more thoroughly hear a lot of the general presentations. And to help capture questions, which are welcome throughout the entire program, I'll invite you to offer them in a couple of ways. You are welcome to put them in the chat, and if myself or any of our other presenters are able to answer them during the presentation, we will do so. Otherwise, the chat will serve as kind of a parking lot, and we'll revisit that at the end to make sure that your questions do get answered. And then in addition to that, we will have an open question and answer time where you can raise your hand and we can call on you so you can speak directly with our instructors or myself to make sure that you've learned everything that you came here to learn. So we'd love to get going with some introductions. So very, very delighted to have two of our amazing interpersonal neurobiology instructors here with us this evening. So we can go ahead and start. My name is Amy Evans. I am the program coordinator with PCC's Institute for Health Professionals and helped bring this program to life and bring it to your educational opportunity every year. So we're really I'm thrilled to have you here this evening and to be able to share a little bit more about this. I can introduce myself more in a few minutes, but I'd love for you to meet two of our amazing instructors, Lisa and Maureen. So Lisa, could you go ahead and introduce yourself, please?
Absolutely. Thank you, Amy. Good evening, everybody. I'm Dr. Lisa Osheim. I am the Director of Counseling Services here at PCC, and I am a counselor educator. So I have been a professor for a little over 20 years now, and my specialty is helping counselors bridge from theory to practice. So that's really my specialty, of course, looking at brain development and brain science and human development across the lifespan. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Maureen, would you share a little about yourself, please?
Yeah, hi, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. My work has been in family violence for the better part of, well, my whole career, which spans several decades. And then I went back to school. So I'm now a doctoral student at Portland State in the applied psychology in the community psychology program specifically. And I did the IPNB certificate program at Portland State, finished it in 2016. Before we didn't do cohort. When we were at Portland State, we didn't do cohorts. So I started like in 2009. So you just took classes as you went until you were finished. So the PCC cohort model is different and a pleasure to be a part of. So welcome, everyone.
Thank you so much, Maureen. We're so thrilled to have both of you here with us this evening. So thank you for taking time out of your schedules. As I mentioned, my name is Amy Evans. I have probably emailed with several of you. I know some of you have been eager to have this program resume. So we are thrilled to offer that opportunity to you. I am the program education coordinator. I oversee the interpersonal neurobiology program and as well as several others. I have a background in program development, community health education, massage therapy, energy healing, and a wide variety of things that really are embodied as passions that show up in this certificate. So I'm really glad to help give you this opportunity. Among some of the other programs, just so you see where this fits in at our institution, we have a really unique department, the Institute for Health Professionals, within Portland Community College. And it's all on the non-credit side, helping people either enter health professions through phlebotomy, pharmacy technician, and medical assisting, a variety of entry-level programs that are certificate-based and support people beginning their exploration there. We also have some of the programs and courses that help people maintain and renew their certifications, especially the suite of American Heart Association classes. So many of those are 1 or 2 days that need to be taken every few years for people to stay current in their skills. And then we have an amazing suite of courses that supports professional development. So whether people are wanting to enter new fields or are existing healthcare providers or educators or others, and they're wanting to expand their knowledge, we have a lot of integrated healthcare classes such as functional nutrition, IPNB that we'll be talking about this evening, herbalism, Ayurveda yoga, and then some other classes where people can expand their knowledge in clinical research and mental behavioral health classes. So you are in taking this program supported by not only myself, but a department and then all of the resources at Portland Community College. So with that, I think we're going to dive into exactly what is interpersonal neurobiology. Here at PCC, we really encourage approaching IPNB with an open learner's mind. And I'm going to let Lisa share a little bit more about this, but I thought before I did, I would just answer the question of what is interpersonal neurobiology from the perspective of a former instructor of ours, Dr. Mary Metter. She explained kind of in a simplified version that IPNB is the science of what it means to be human, kind of looking at some of the assumptions that we have as humans with the way we are in the world and how we see it being the way that it is. Whereas IPNB really takes the opportunity to question that and to look at it from both the biological and the social sciences to explore how we're all connected, what are some of the universal concepts, and how can we better understand ourselves in ever-evolving ways. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa where she can expand and help better explain what IPNB is.
Oh, thank you, Amy. You know, folks, I want to share with you something that's really personal in my IPNB journey. I was a practitioner, I was a professor teaching master's and doctoral level counselors in training and psychologists in training. And what I discovered through the years of practice, being in relationship with both students, practitioners, well, and also clients, is I realized just through observation that the stronger the relationship, the more attunement that existed between the helper and the person they were helping, the more effective the results, the more healing could take place. And so it was through that observation that I dove into the science. How was this happening? I know that relationships are important, but how were those relationships affecting the very makeup of who we are so that we could change those parts of ourselves that were hurting, that were unhealed, that had been traumatized? How was the relationship alone so effective? And it was through that question that I started engaging in a lot of research because I'm a professor, I'm a paid researcher. I'm a nerd by profession. And so I had the space to dive into the research. And I was immediately very clear about what was happening. These different branches of our fields were coming together in this recognition that our brains and our structures change as the result of relationships. So I thought Amy said it so beautifully about being human with one another. IPNB is really about the impact of those human connections, the study and the exploration of how we attach to one another, what happens when attachments are strained or ruptured, how we grow together, and how we interconnect in a way that is either to the benefit or detriment of our bodies, our nervous system, systems, our memory storage, all of that is impacted by relationship. And so when I learned of IPNB when it was just emerging, I was immediately let's say I was hooked. I couldn't get enough of it. I read everything I could and then had to find more. It is still a very emerging field, and that's very exciting, I think, to all of us. There is still more to be learned about how relationships impact our well-being, our development, and what we choose to do next in our lives. So our past, present, and futures are greatly impacted by the interconnectedness we share. As a helper, that's especially delicious to me because what I've learned is that as helpers, in whatever form that helping takes, we have a lot of power with the people we're helping. We together have a lot of power to create healing just by being human. Learning the science behind all of that creates much more intentional healing, growth, and development. So IPNB at the core is the confluence of several different fields of study that all center around relationships and the healing that is to be had, the development and growth that is to be had through those relationships. So I'm a big fan. I hope that you'll become a fan along with me. This is something that can impact you personally, just knowing how you relate with others. And then, of course, as a helper, IPNB is sufficient. Oh, and thank you for that graphic. This is perfect timing for that. So we've got the personal development and attunement that happens. And then, of course, the professional relationships that we have where we are helping others and we are impacted by those we help. It is a reciprocal relationship. And then at the nexus of that, our growth and integration. And I think Maureen's about to explain that integration component of IPNB, if I correctly memorized the slides. I don't
A little bit later, I think
know. Okay,
I can jump to that, but
that's
might,
okay.
yeah, if we could, maybe talk more. It's still, I just kind of more, if you could say more just about who can benefit from the program.
Oh, absolutely. Who can benefit from IPNB? Well, of course, I'm biased, so I say just about anybody who is in the role to help, and just about any human is in a role to help. So, in terms of professional identities, you all know what it is you do and who you are in your professional lives. So, you'll ultimately make the determination about whether this program is the right fit for you. But we have seen folks from all different disciplines. So I'm looking at the slide right now and looking at body workers, absolutely. Educators. Educators have a great ability to help others learn, and we know there are a lot of barriers to learning. IPNB can help get through some of those learning barriers so that folks have the ability to gather, integrate, and store information, new information. Administrators and leaders. I add to that supervisors and managers, therapists and counselors, absolutely. Law enforcement specialists, absolutely. I do a lot of work with the sheriff's office, and I will tell you that there are a few folks there who have steeped themselves in IPNB and are able to do much more effective work as folks around them experience trauma. So not as therapists, but as law enforcement specialists. Healthcare professionals, absolutely, because this really has to do with our physiology and our being in the world. Advocates and activists. Activism takes a lot out of a person. Relationships put a lot back. So those are folks on a professional level, and of course, many more. I encourage you at this moment to think about what is it I'd be interested in doing with this, and where would I fit in here? And we're happy to help you explore that. On a personal level, IPNB, I think, can be rather transformative for folks as we learn about IPNB. There's opportunity to attune and develop your spiritual being, certainly your relationships, both with yourself and with others, your communal experience and your community. IPNB facilitates learning and growth, not just about yourself or your psychology, but also about your development, your memory, the way you store. Certainly personal healing. IPNB, for many folks who are in a journey of healing, they find that IPNB can be really helpful because they learn how to utilize the necessary and important relationships in their life to further their own healing. And I am talking about medical healing, psychological, emotional healing, whatever type of healing needs to happen. And of course, we understand that at the heart of IPNB is nurture. IPNB focuses a lot on nurture, attachment, and attunement. And that's where mindfulness really comes in. If you find that you have a mindfulness practice, you're a fan of mindfulness, you'll appreciate those parts of IPNB that really focus with one's ability to be mindful and the use of mindfulness to dig deep into one's experience. I think I covered all I wanted to on that slide. And Maureen, would you like me to go or would you like to take over here?
I think go ahead, because I feel like so much of what you've said kind of segues nicely with this, and I think the key point that we're really wanting to make is it isn't like who can benefit from the foundation, but also to what relationships can this foundation be applied. And Lisa, I think you were speaking so beautifully to the different ways relationships benefit from the foundation of IPNB, no matter like who you are as a person or a professional, then this impact that it has relationally in people's lives that, kind of are that ripple effect. So I'd love to just have you kind of finish through that thinking.
Absolutely.
If that works.
Absolutely. Maureen, I'm thinking about a student who I got to work with in this program and you got to work with. And I was in touch recently with that student. I actually ran into them at a PCC campus and we had a fun conversation. And this student, I said, what did you like most about your experience? And the student said, I really liked what it did to my relationships accidentally. There was a lot of, they reflected a lot of thoughtfulness in the way that they related to others and the way they were impacting and impacted by others that they came across, both professionally and personally. They said that that had been an unexpected side effect of the program, was that their simple way of relating to others changed as their understanding of the impact of that relating really deepened. So through this program, there's a deepening understanding of what relationships do. And so relationships become even more important. Even the tiniest relationships that might be more marginalized in your world or the most important core relationships, they all change as a result of understanding impact and reciprocal impact of relationships. So I found that conversation with that former student to be really helpful to me in understanding how really most anyone might transform a bit as a result of this learning.
Yeah. Thank you. I just love the way you're framing, this idea of relationships. And the other part of the work that I've done has been that I worked for 20 years in a justice studies department at San Jose State. And the work I did there was in family and community violence and also race, gender inequality in the law. And those relationships, it's like one thing to think about relationships in, I'll say, a constructive way. And we also explore in this program the destructive ways our humans come together in this world, and looking at bias and exclusion and ways that our neurobiology is also I'll say wired, also designed to exclude and to form in-groups and out-groups and to create bias and exclusion. And it's a very important part of this program to explore how bias and stereotyping are neurobiologically and relationally grounded, and how we start to explore that bias so that we can move towards that intention of integration internally, within us and between us, and then more collectively among us all as equal participants in this human adventure, right? So, I think that relational piece is kind of expands. If we think about meditations, it keeps expanding to that collective. And so I think, just kind of as a segue then to kind of take that and look at what those essentials to building that foundation are is, as Lisa, I think, articulated really well, is that IPNB is a meta framework. It is an emerging field. It's not the most, it's not like you're going to hear us say, here's what IPNB is, and here are the basic tenets and principles of the theory or the model. It really is this consilience of all these sciences that help inform the mind, brain, and relationships, and how those come together. So thinking of it as a meta framework rather than a theory, or rather than a discipline that's constrained and boundaried, we actually see it as much more of an open framework. And so what I think you'll be able to see then is how this relates in your life, in your work, personal, spiritually, professionally, and as Lisa's articulated so nicely, relationally, right? So I brought up too this part about relationships that aren't simply the positive side, but rather the challenges we face. Because I can't, Lisa brought up the other student who experienced the surprise of how it benefited relationships. And I would say the other thing that I've heard over the years is that people are surprised at how it challenged them, and that it wasn't always comfortable, that there was some uncomfortable growing and learning that went into this that was very, not predicted. I think as our mind starts to reflect on our mind, and we have language to reflect on our being, and our being in the world with others, it really starts to raise some discomfort at times. And then there's some other things that are maybe more challenging, like the class that Lisa, teaches gets into trauma, I believe, and has us kind of looking at those attachment relationships. And then we do have, I never remember the name of the classes because they change, but the bias and inclusion class that looks at our bias and stereotypes. That's another one that can be more overt a challenge. Is that come to the program learner's mind, as Amy mentioned in the very beginning, and that open mind is the curious mind that recognizes when it starts to feel uncomfortable and makes a conscious choice about how much to fully engage. One of the things I say early in as the navigator is it's challenge by choice. We don't want people going into panic zones. We don't want people to feel so uncomfortable that they have to shut down. And while you're learning the science of what it means to really shut down, but rather continue to watch that and respond to that in a very engaged way as a curious mind, and learning to help our minds make that shift from anxious to curious is an amazing moment. And what happens by having the cohort model is that happens in relationship with others who are on, the same path, but different journeys in a way, so we do explore IPNB and face the challenges and the different opportunities together as a cohort. And so there's a real strong emphasis on doing this as a cohort, learning IPNB through the relationships that we're learning together with. So there are different activities. Some people love the super didactic, lecture-y, kinds of moments where you learn something about the science of IPNB or learn about the 9 domains of integration. You learn that in a dyadic kind of way. But then we go into other embodied practices or mindfulness practices that people can kind of get uncomfortable with, or vice versa. Some people are super, super comfortable with the mindfulness practices and the body practices and really, really struggle through the didactic, so it really is different things for different people at different times. And it's not just one thing. So it says reflect, embody, apply, and repeat, because it just keeps going in different ways. And some classes have more strongly focused on body work, and others more strongly focused on, kind of lecture, others more strongly focused on discussion and integration, but it's all in there. So, overall, that feeling of interconnectedness. And I just like to kind of bring up this one model that's very central to Dan Siegel's IPNB, which is the triangle of well-being, that points to this relationship between relationships, mind, and the embodied brain that you've heard Lisa talk about, and I've referenced it a couple times. It's really central, is that we look at this triangle, we look at experience through kind of this triad, getting into the neuroscience of the embodied brain. And we say embodied brain because it's the whole nervous system. We're not just looking at the skull brain. The mind is an emergent property, the flow of energy and information that comes through our relationships and is orchestrated through our full embodied nervous system. And that's the model as it sat, kind of one-dimensionally. But when you think about IPNB, we like to add a second because we're in relationship, right? So we put in this second triangle of well-being also, of mind, relationships, and the embodied brains of others, and start to recognize ourselves in an emergent network, an emergent adaptive complex system of all of this, right? All of these nodes of people and people in community and communities in society, just keep going. We're all in these adaptive systems. And this becomes the language of IPNB that turns these concepts into the prism through which the information goes and expands. And I always like to think of IPNB as the information comes in and IPNB expands it into the spectrum of almost wisdom, of ways of knowing instead of the known. Like we can know the light going in. We can talk about, that ray, we can talk about the waves, but it's so much more powerful when you see that single light is a spectrum of waves, basically, that we can experience in a much more full capacity. And I think of IPNB as that, and how our understanding of how the mind and brain work in relationship with others, becomes this beautiful connectome, both within and between and among us all. So that's kind of the framework. And then I know I'm kind of going on a little bit long here, but then just to say that one of the other central ideas that's woven through the program are the 9 domains of integration. And integration is another really core concept in IPNB that is, thinks about the idea that well-being is based on integration, and that is differentiation and linkage. So differentiation, understanding different parts, but the importance is in the linkage, in the connection, the energy and the bond that is between. And that's where most of IPNB lives. And that's where those magic moments happen. And those magic or surprising challenges happen, like is in the in-between. So integration then has these 9 domains that Dan Siegel introduced, of those different levels of consciousness. But like the bilateral is something I think most people would be familiar with right and left brain needing to be, having their specialized contributions to thinking, but integrating as a whole. The vertical integration, meaning that embodied sense that our nervous system and our skull brains work up, down, and like it has to integrate fully in our embodied brain. The memory integration from implicit to explicit, stories and semantic memory into our stories that hold a coherent whole that allows things like traumatic memories to integrate and feel whole and a part of a story of things that happen to us rather than who we are. It's all these different ways that integration come together in IPNB in different ways at different times. So those are themes those 9 domains are integrated across all the classes. So I think that went on a bit, but Lisa, I'll send it back to you to talk about to help us with a guided experience.
That's great. Thank you, Maureen. I'm always reminded when I hear you speak of how much I'd love to be a student of yours. And I learn every time I listen to you. Thank you. Folks, I think Maureen really set us up well to understand that this is not just a series of classes. This is an experience. And as I mentioned to you earlier, my specialty, my belief is that the best, most effective helpers are the ones who know how to engage in the experience of helping. And that experience starts with the helper, it starts with us. And so what you'll find sprinkled throughout the IPNB experience is that nobody is a passive learner in this series. This isn't sit and get information. This is experience. Take what you're learning and apply it, absorb it, examine it from all angles. And that's really what this experience is about, is examining. And a lot of that examination has to do with self-application. And as Maureen said, the meta examination. So, I teach the class that looks at trauma. And one of the things that we do in that class is we examine how we're doing in every moment of that class. We can't learn if our nervous system does not allow it, if our memories do not allow it, if something that is happening for us does not allow learning. So we really are constantly attuning. We're getting in touch with ourselves throughout the process. We're building skills that we will then use in our helping with others. So one of the things that you might experience in a class, especially if you're in a class with me, is that we might be doing an activity like the safe anchor activity. If we were doing this activity together, I'd be asking you to select a symbol of a safe and attuned moment in your lifetime, somewhere in your lifetime. Where were you safe, even for just a moment? Where were you very tuned in? Where might you have felt very relaxed, very in touch with yourself in the moment, even for just a moment? And is there something that symbolizes that moment for you? Was it a graduation, where a graduation cap will always remind you of that moment? Was it a time you were in a hug with somebody else? Was it a moment of peace atop a mountain? What was that moment, and what symbol might you be able to yield from that moment? And then that symbol becomes your anchor. So if you're a student, you might be using that symbol anytime you notice that your attention starts to drift. Oftentimes at IPNB, we say that a wandering mind is not the happiest of minds. A wandering mind can be brought back through integration. So this symbol becomes your anchor that you use through your learning experience, so that you could stay attuned with the content, that you could stay attuned with the relationship between all of the learners. I might be asking you to examine that symbol, examine that anchor from all angles. I might be asking you to invite the feelings that exist alongside that anchor, and just to be at peace with those feelings, whatever they might be. We might then do an exercise where you're pairing some intentional calm with that anchor to help that anchor symbol become even more effective for you when you are feeling agitated. We are looking to create an automatic physiological response that will help you through your learning and then becomes a tool that you might be using with others. So I'm wanting to give you an example of an experience that you might have in a class where you are working on your own integration, on your own experiencing and your own skill building, so that you might become even more effective with others. So this, again, this isn't a sit and learn type of experience. This is a very involved and active experiential learning. I hope you're all thinking of that symbol. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa.
That was really wonderful explanation, both of you. Really appreciate that. So hopefully everyone can just take a breath. You've gotten a lot of information on the what of IPNB and some of the concepts and things that get explored. Now we're going to dive a little more into the nitty-gritty of the program itself. So Maureen and I are going to share a little bit around the certificate. This program is taught by 8 expert faculty, and we're really grateful to all of them. They all have full-time jobs and are working elsewhere, but they are passionate about IPNB, as you have seen this evening, and they're really honored to be able to bring this material to life for you and help you share it with others and bring this more into the world, into your work, into your personal lives, into all that you do. We know it's a really important field, and that the certificate that we have created together is really quite a unique opportunity. To the best of our knowledge, there is no other place that you can go to study IPNB as a cohort with a variety of professionals and really tease out and explore the many different facets of applying it to different work in the world. So with that, I'll just give you a quick rundown. The program is, it's a 7-month-long program, and we have, as I mentioned, all of the expert faculty. It's composed predominantly of live stream sessions via Zoom, like this one, that all happen on Tuesday evenings. And it's a hybrid program in that we will have a 4-day in-person immersion. We'll talk about that a little bit more later, but we really, being an interpersonal program, we'd love to give everyone the opportunity to come together and explore some of the more tender topics, or potentially touching aspects in a really safe environment and a supported space, to help make sure that there's really solid integration and depth. You can reach so much of that together. So we prime you a lot with the online learning, and then bring you together for a deep dive, and then continue that exploration and building upon that for the rest of the program there. We considered it a 2+ term. We are in the process of actually technically making that 2.5 terms. So when we cover the details of the program, you'll see that in college terms, at a quarterly system, it's going to span 3 terms. And we do utilize a flipped curriculum at times, so kind of prepping you with some of the content and then diving more deeply into the application of that in the live stream classes as well. And as you can see on the screen, we've got 125 CEU hours packed into this program, so more than most professionals need in any 2 to 4 year period, so you should be set. All right, thanks, Maureen. So to start off with, it's always great to start at the beginning with an introduction. So our winter term is where the program will next begin, so January, and we will start with an intro to IPNB. This is a 5-week course in which you will gain exposure, you'll learn some of the common vocabulary, and really become familiar with some of the key IPNB concepts that we'll be building on throughout the rest of the program. Many of the things that are taught in this program are based on some of the thought leaders in the field, so you'll be reading and studying some of their work, and just really becoming familiar with how IPNB shows up in your world and across the global community. Where do you see it in the news? How is it applied? Where is it appearing now that you're familiar in some of the memes on social media and your experiences in day-to-day life? And of course, because you'll be learning this as a cohort, you'll get to tease that out together and explore how it's showing up differently from other perspectives to continue that juiciness and bringing it to life there. So lots of great ways of relating to the material. Once you have kind of gotten a taste of some of the key concepts, then you get to spend an evening with Maureen for your first deep dive. She'll be with you during the orientation, but then we're really going to give her a chance to work with you around the navigation and integration of the concept. So I'll let Maureen share a little bit of that class that's woven throughout the entire program.
Yeah, I would say, kind of the dirty secret about this program is it's complicated. And you will experience it, and students do get frustrated by it, honestly. D2L is not the most pleasant world to navigate, I would say, and online learning is difficult. So we've added navigation to try to make that a little bit easier, to help you feel like there's a place where you can get grounded again in between the course transitions. We can't do it. There's not enough time to do it between every class. That'd be another way to do it ideally, but we have them sprinkled through the program. And the idea, Amy just used the word deep dive. I wouldn't say what I help you do is a deep dive. I would say what I have you do is a navigate. I'm there to help you kind of work through becoming a cohort. So there's the relational piece that comes in the first, between the orientation and in that first navigation session. It's really supporting you all as a cohort and the relationships that are developing and safe ways of being together so that everyone feels present and seen and feels like they can do that in I stopped short of saying a safe place, because I know for some people at some times and different people at different times, it doesn't feel safe. It's a matter of navigating the uncomfortable sometimes. So how do we do that? And how do we do it as a cohort? And how do we support each other? So that's what navigation is, especially early on. But then navigation also is like, oh my gosh, I just got lost between the science and the trauma class. Where are we? I don't know. So I'm also there kind of practically to just know that you're not having to be out there in the woods alone, especially when you make a transition from one class to the next, because every instructor is different and every instructor does it differently. We've tried to integrate, because that's such an important part of IPNB, we have tried to integrate and link the ways that we approach it from D2L, so that you know where to find your assignments and where to turn them in, things like that. But the truth is, it's also very differentiated. And so you're going to feel the difference between teachers, and you may be like, oh my gosh, I'm confused. And so the navigation helps you do that also. So it's kind of, it's there to help the program work better for you as a cohort, I would say. Yeah.
I would also add, if you don't mind, correct me if I'm wrong, Maureen, but I have observed Maureen very beautifully holding the framework of IPNB and helping everyone see how what they're learning plugs back into that. She's master with the 9 domains of integration and can really help make sure that that is threaded with some continuity throughout. And that's something that I've seen you bring into the navigation and integration role so beautifully.
Thank you. Yeah, I would say that's the other part of it for sure, is like, what did we just do and where are we going now? I mean, I don't repeat anything, but it is a place to kind of help weave that through thread of what are the kind of the primary ideas of IPNB, because each of the classes will go off in its specialty area. And that's the thing about IPNB, is it's the consilience of science, which means there's a whole body of science that's being touched on. And as Lisa was talking about, it's that convergence, right? It's touching on these things, but there's these whole other bodies of information that's available out there, and like what brings this together into a woven kind of tapestry that we can call IPNB. And then somebody asked in the chat, what's D2L? Thank you for asking. Yeah, D2L is the learning management system. So that's the place where you land. It's just technology. It's where the class material goes. It's your portal into this class that tells you the syllabus and when things are due and where the links to the assignments are and what the objectives are for each class. It's that portal you go on to that gives you all that information. And it's not the easiest interface for those of us setting up those objectives and those assignments and everything else. And then the students come in and say, what? So kind of navigating that also. That's what D2L is. It's generally called a learning management system. Trying to think what the, if you haven't been in school for a while, like trying to think what the thing is that would compare.
It's formerly known
wiki.
as Brightspace or Desire to Learn. So different schools have adopted it, utilizing different systems. Yes, these portals, thank you for the comment in the chat. These portals are seldom easy at first, but it is something that everyone becomes familiar with and you find your way. And that is part of being part of the larger college community. We have a dedicated student help desk. So when you are in the early stages of figuring out how to navigate it, there is a lot of support for you to do that. And then, of course, Maureen to help you apply that specifically to the class, as well as an orientation that I do. So we have lots of support. Don't want to scare you from the system there. But with everything new, there's a little learning curve to it. So thank you. So back to the topics that you'll be learning in the specific courses within the program. We have the science of IPNB. This is another 6-week program, and that this class gets divided between the online Zoom-based learning, and then it's the first class that we've discussed so far that will be part of that in-person immersion weekend. So in the science of IPNB, you will be exploring a lot of the bioscience and how biology informs and intersects with IPNB concepts. And what is this organ of our brain, and how does it connect with everything throughout the body? How do hormones and the enteric nervous system and polyvagal theory and so many related things tie into the way we differentiate and the way we experience the world? And more importantly, as we engage in mindfulness and other IPNB concepts, how can we influence this physiology that we are walking around in all day in and day out? So you will be together online exploring this and getting most of the key concepts to that. The one piece that we hold for that in-person immersion is the brain dissection. So we find that many people have never seen a real brain before, or certainly haven't gotten to dissect it with this IPNB lens in mind. So it's really been a lot of fun to be able to see visibly how close some of these structures are to each other in proximity, to be able to kind of put your eyes on different facets of the brain and getting to explore that minute detail and as you've been applying it in some of the other classes and courses. So that is our Science of IPNB class. And then we do not have ethics called out as a formal class anymore. What we have done is woven ethics throughout the entire program. We recognize that ethics, as it is applied to IPNB, takes many different forms and many different facets. So each of the instructors has chosen to integrate and address ethics relative to their specific topic and help you bring that to life a little bit there. So in total, we make sure that you have covered 6 hours of ethics education. We know that that is often a helpful aspect to be able to let any boards know that you're looking for license renewals with. But we used to have it as a specific topic, and we found that it was just so vast that we wanted to make sure that it was threaded lovingly and supportively throughout with each of the topics that you're diving into. So Maureen or Lisa, would either of you like to share a little bit about ethics and your classes or components?
I'm quite happy to. Ethics is so near and dear to my heart. I think that one of the great understandings that helpers hold is that we have the power to help, we have the power to positively influence, and with that, we have equal or more power to hurt. And so, one of the things that we are so careful about as helpers is what our impact is on others, so that we don't accidentally create any harm, so that we don't accidentally do something that's going to prohibit somebody from getting needed help, or we don't want to enhance any trauma again, accidentally. Most helpers do not set out to do something that will hurt somebody else, but we develop this understanding that we could, that while humans are strong, we know that relationships have impact. So we know that we could quite accidentally pour salt into a wound without ever meaning to. So, with the best of intentions, we have some power to influence for the worse. And so, I was sort of giggling when Amy mentioned that there were 6 hours lovingly threaded throughout, because I'm thinking just in our one day together, we'll have more than 6 hours, because ethics really are at the core of all we do as helpers, especially when we examine the vulnerability that exists in relationships, any relationship, but especially helping ones.
Yeah. Yeah, and I cover work by Darshan Narvaez as a piece in the ethics for the connections class, and that looks at different levels of moral development. Basically, it's kind of a moral development model, but there again we look at ethics in terms of people's kind of ethical platform from which they may engage with relationships, whether they're ones of safety, engagement, or communal imagination. And so I love her model, I love her spirit, and so I love bringing that in as my piece on ethics. And so you'll learn more in the community connections about that ethical framework.
Thank you both so much. Appreciate you bringing that to life a little bit. So that completes the winter term, and then again, college terms. For the full program, you'll receive a comprehensive schedule with kind of seamless transitions between the terms. But because we are a college, we do acknowledge the actual terms. So when we start the spring term, you will be able to kick that off with Lisa, who will be teaching attachment and trauma, or IPNB of attachment and trauma. So I'll let her share more about that class.
Absolutely. I promise I'll keep it to 30 seconds, because this class just excites me like very little else does. It is so amazing. This is one of those classes where you learn a lot about yourself. You might know a lot coming into it, and you'll share what you know with others. And from an IPNB lens, when we really take a deep dive into our attachments and what the reciprocal impact of attachment has been in our own experiences, it really brings to life a lot of the material and the content. It is a content-rich class, but again, that personal application is what really brings the material to life, and understanding what attachments do, what they do to our brain, what they do to our very being. That's an eye-opener for a lot of folks. So it's one of those classes where you have a lot of material to absorb and a lot of personal experience to navigate. So it's an intense class. Some might experience it as pretty rough. There's sort of an aftermath of experiencing a class like this. And of course, the deep dive into trauma and the workings of trauma from the multiple lenses that IPNB espouses. That's big work. And we look at the confluence. How do attachment and trauma correlate? And again, as you can imagine, this is really intense learning. We take it slow, we use our best tools, we lead up to it. But this class is an intense one. And I think what you learn, you can't possibly unlearn. So you come out of this class with a bit of a changed lens. If I've done my job well, and I promise you I will, because this matters so much to me, and I think to all of us. So thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. We have also woven a couple of seminar classes throughout the program. These were new last year, and we added them because we recognized that there were a few themes that people were especially interested in exploring and applying. And we also recognized that after some of the more intense study in some of these classes, it's nice to have a little breather where you just get to sit back and experience and explore without homework, without assignments, without quizzes, without any validating skill building intent there. So with that, we have added 2 seminars, a Mind for Learning and the Leadership Seminar. The Mind for Learning class is really around how do we apply IPNB to learners and learning? How do you support the person who's sharing the knowledge in an IPNB centric way, as well as support the learner and make sure that they're open and able to really receive and engage with what is being taught? Of course, for many people, this applies in a more traditional educational sense. This has served to support teachers and trainers, but we also know that people in all settings are learning. How do we learn and take in information ourselves, as well as when you are a manager or a leader and trying to help share information one-on-one with an employee or a client or someone in helping them with their learning process. So all of that is explored in this 3-hour seminar, free of homework. Just come, experience, and engage with that a little bit. And then we move into our bridging relational neuroscience across differences. Maureen helped teach this class in the past, so I'm going to let her share a little bit more about that.
Okay, yeah, and it changes a little bit depending on the instructors for sure, but I think I talked about it a little bit earlier, or at least enough reference to it that we do look at, Lisa brought up impact, that, kind of looking at, that wasn't my intention versus that actually was the impact, and being able to recognize that, being able to look at the neuroscience of bias and fast activation systems versus slower systems, how quickly we respond to negative bias, things like that, getting wired in and help to kind of raise that consciousness. So where Lisa's class on trauma helps us recognize trauma and how it comes into our lives and how it comes into our relationships. This looks, I would say, at a broader lens, more collective lens, at the harms done over time in history and how that really is a part of our human physiology and how we can become more aware of the ways that, I think I said before, like just how we can marginalize others and exclude others it's a very normal physiological response that we absolutely have evolved to be able to manage and reflect and move back into relationship, back into gratitude, back into appreciation for diversity. It's where we are stronger is in diversity, and yet it's one of the challenges of our older neurophysiology. So being able to recognize the challenge and the opportunity that our evolved mind-brain relationships offer us, and how that works in diversity moving forward. And I don't know if they get into it, but I know in our community we bring in the diversity of the ecology as well. So just being able to recognize the IPNB of that.
Great. Thank you so much, Maureen. One of the other classes that you will be taking is Embodied Systems and Mindful Resilience. This is another class that was renamed last year. So if you've been following us for a while, it's not a new class. We just have refined it a little bit. And this is a class that's really looking at how does trauma get stored in the body? How do some of these things that we've experienced, whether in our lifetimes or even kind of genetically, live in the tissue? And how can we shift that? So this class is taught by someone who's trained in extensively in body work, Rolfing or structural integration specifically. And so he's very attuned to where it's living and how we can move that through the tissue and expand and open ourselves into deeper healing and new experiences, new ways of carrying our body and being free of some of this historical trauma, and whether it's conscious to us or not, and so helping move some of that. And then, of course, engaging in the mindfulness, the mindful awareness of where our body is telling us, what it's holding, and how shifting our posture and how we carry ourselves and the breath can do so much to help break these patterns and let us live in a whole new way in our beingness. Then we give you another chance to have a break with another seminar. And this seminar is co-taught by Lisa and one of her colleagues. So I'll let Lisa share a little bit more about leadership.
All right. Oh, I had a lot of fun with this seminar. In this seminar, we really take a look at leadership in its most general and broad definition, and what IPNB and leadership have to do with one another. If we think about IPNB as a framework that examines the impact of relationships, as you can imagine, leadership in any form involves relationships and involves the co-impact of relationships. So in this seminar, we look at many forms of leadership. We look at leadership style, we look at leadership approaches, and we look at those integrative aspects of IPNB and the integrated leader, what an integrated leader brings to any situation in which they are providing leadership, whether it's a formal role or more informal leadership. So, Portland's a fun place for me to teach from because we have a lot of examples of informal leadership, activism, that sort of thing. And then we have a lot of formal leadership in our world all around. So we give a lot of examples of different types of leadership from an IPNB lens. We examine some leaders to look at their leadership style. So what we've got in tune for this year are some vignettes. We'll examine leadership styles from that IPNB lens and evaluate various levels of integration. So it's more of a fun approach type class. There's a lot of information, but this one is certainly a lot lighter than the attachment and trauma class. And I think that you'll enjoy it, regardless of whether you're in any sort of formal leadership position or not. We all have a relationship to leadership. So this is one of those immediately applicable type classes.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And that kind of completes the spring term. So moving into the summer term, you get to finish the program off with Maureen with a capstone experience. So this term is only 5 weeks, so it's not technically a full term, but we are really excited for what she delivers there. I'll let you share more.
Well, the truth is, it's what you deliver there. So, the big thing is this is your capstone class. I do grab some of the time because I love community and connections, and I wish I had more time for this class, honestly, because it's like taking community and connections, but we're really celebrating your community and your learning and the connections you've made with the material. So a large part of this class is you each doing a 15 or 20-minute presentation of how you have integrated and applied the IPNB concepts in over the 9 months that you've been doing this work. So I get to step back and really have you each take the lead on this, and it really is it's really a amazing class, and all members of the cohort come away saying, oh my gosh, I had no idea, that I could, that you could do that, or that this is the work you've been doing, or this is how you're applying that, or just really these spotlights on people. And it's not all professional applications. Somebody once did a family tree and applied IPNB across the generations. So there's any number of ways that it can be applied, but this is kind of your time that you build up to. So a lot of this is your presentations, but I do sneak in some of that, like I said, the Darshan Narvai's sense of community through a moral development lens. And what is community? My program now at Portland State is community psychology. So I have a deep love of that. And my first lens was IPNB, not community psych. You could make that argument anyway, formally, I should say. So I do enjoy applying IPNB lens to community and understanding community and the psychology of community, sense of community, but there's not a whole lot of time. So that's kind of how that class goes. Goes fast is what it is.
Thank you so much, Maureen. We get such great feedback on this class and the surprises and how inspiring all of the presentations are. So it is one that people, it culminates all that you've been learning, and it flows and shows in so many beautiful ways. So I think you'll love it as well. So I think that kind of is our summary for the classes that are comprised in the program. I want to reference again that this is mostly an online program with the exception of our 4-day in-person immersion. So this is a weekend that we have intentionally set as early in the program as we can after you've gotten some of those key foundational concepts. So we're ready for a deeper dive and to really apply some of these in more targeted and unique ways. So you finish the intro, you finish the science, you touch base with Maureen a couple of times through the navigation, and you're ready to get into the depths of things. So we scheduled this year. I'm sorry, there is a typo in that. It should say April 11 to 14, 2024. I always have to have a typo somewhere in these presentations, so I'm glad to find it now. So this, you can plan ahead. This weekend will be held in Portland, Oregon. So if you're not in the area, we do ask you to plan to travel. We've had several times where people have decided to bring their family and enjoy a little bit of Portland, staying an extra few days, or go up into the mountains. It's still a great time for that spring skiing, so you can take full advantage of all that Portland offers, including the great food. If you are a foodie, we've got good options there for all kinds of specialty diets. You will be in class, at least the participants of the program. Your family may be off venturing out there, but you can plan to be in class for 6 to 8 hours each of those 4 days. We give you a break early enough on Sunday in case you do need to catch a flight home. And all of the classes are held at the PCC Climb Center. It's very centrally located. It's a single building with ample parking. And for anyone familiar with Portland, it's located right across from the OMSI. So in inner southeast Portland, there's lots of places to stay within a mile or two. You're right across the river from downtown. There's lots of Airbnbs around and some fun things in walking distance, including the Willamette River. So I've always enjoyed walking along the river from the Climb Center there. We do ask you to please save Saturday evening for a special optional dinner that we have where a lot of the faculty come and enjoy, and all of the participants in the program get together. We have a fun surprise activity for you there, and it's really just a nice time to hang out, relax, and socialize. You will have gotten to know each other some through the class, and a lot of people enjoy the time to just relax and have some camaraderie together. So with that, I think, let's see, yes. So in general, the time investment is about 28 weeks with 1 live session a week. We've got that, we've kind of refined our hybrid format to where we did shrink the Tuesday time down a little bit, and some of the instructors are pre-recording some of their content so that, again, that in-person time, the live stream time is more dedicated to integrating, to doing breakout groups and exploring more of the application aspects of some of these concepts. So more about that during the program orientation. We do help you stay connected throughout each week through discussion boards. There is study and preparation that we have you plan for as well. So this is not a passive program. You will be using some different books and have assignments, and we really want you to be able to make this your own by the end of that. So, and then of course we've referenced the in-person immersion there. Being a college level program, we do suggest the same kind of standard formula of planning 1 hour of study time, 1 to 3 hours of study time for every hour of class time. So you'll have 2 to 3 hours of class each week. So we recommend that you plan on 3 to 9 hours of study and prep time, 2 to 9 hours, somewhere in there. Many people can be a little bit on the shorter side of that, but there's so many optional materials and things that some people may choose to make this their primary focus for some of that time, and they want to explore all of the rabbit holes and a lot of the things that are brought, and other people download those materials, save them for later. So the time variable, you do get some say in that. We will have some books and other things that you will be doing, but do plan to set aside a little bit of time so you can get the most out of the program. As you can see on the screen, we were able to actually reduce the cost of the program a couple of years ago, and we, despite inflation, have worked really hard to maintain this. We want this program to be as accessible to folks as possible. So the tuition is just under $2,500. And I have worked with the college to set up a special interest-free payment plan that spreads that tuition out over the course of 6 months. So when you do register, I will send you the contact information for a single person at the college who will help you set up that payment plan if you so choose. We also, the college is happy to accept any educational awards you may have, scholarships you may have received, support from your employer, any sources that you have for funding your education, we can generally accept, with the exception of FAFSA. This is not a credit-based degree-seeking program, so we are excluded from their guidelines. But aside from that, we're glad to help you with anything that you have received. And then we do have some books that you would need to purchase. There's 5 books, and you can buy them really from any of your preferred booksellers. It's your option whether you choose to buy them used or new, so we will not be making you buy them from the PCC bookstore. So I'll send you the list once you've registered, and you can purchase those books at your convenience. You may already have some of the books as well, so that is generally a pretty low cost investment for folks. And we do have a small fee to cover the supplies, the brains, and some of the other fun things that we use during the in-person immersion there. So, and some of the other materials that are needed for the program. So, yes. And now we just wanted to share a little bit about graduates. They have just loved this program. All that they get to find and apply through this. As you can see, one of the quotes on the screen from Sarah, she just loved exploring everything that we had to offer there. I've had other students reference, I'll read a few other quotes here. Science is the best part because it shows the possibility for change. The ability to biologically change is huge and gives me so much hope. It became an exercise in changing my brain and my life. Help make things less emotional, and so many new ways of exploring neural pathways and creating new ways to make my world work. Somebody else applied it. I can tell physically with my Zumba practice that I've seen rapid changes in my performance. My following ability improved really fast and became fine-tuned. The science part is amazing to me because it shows possibility. Still, it must all be mindful. So we've just had so many ways that students have applied and shared. And as we referenced early on, there's the professional world that often brings people here. And then there's that personal application that they find and brings so much more heart in throughout all of their lives, integrating oneself as a whole. Maureen or Lisa, do you have anything else to share? I know Maureen, especially, you've known several of our graduates, and Lisa already referenced having met one of them since the program last year. All right. Well, with that, we'll, oh, Maureen, were you about to say something? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fun for me is just in the capstone is as people see this coming together, you know, and surprising themselves because, you know, getting to that capstone it feels overwhelming. And putting together the concepts, which is one of the first things we do is a concept map, you know, just kind of feel like, what, you know, but to see it all come together for themselves, and then to also recognize how it did span these different aspects of themselves and their identities, you know, the personal, the professional, and the many ways of knowing both themselves and others. It kind of comes out in the capstones across the different students. So yeah, I would say that's been my experience with their fun surprise at the end to themselves.
That's great. Thank you. So next steps, please get ready to register. Um, the winter term registration opens in just a couple of weeks on Wednesday, November 22nd. It will open at 7 a.m. Pacific time. So if anyone is joining us from the East Coast, be patient. Your morning is a little bit earlier than our morning is. But after that, you will have 24/7 access to the program. I do see a question in the chat about our classes recorded, and yes, I should have mentioned that. All of the classes, the Zoom-based classes throughout the program, are recorded and available for you to either rewatch if you want to visit some of what was shared, or if you needed to miss that particular class, it allows you to easily catch up with things. Of course, we do encourage live participation whenever possible, so you can be a part of those discussions and real-time explorations, but we know that life happens and people get busy and kids get sick, and there are occasions where you will need to miss. So we've set that up for your success. The exception to that is that in-person immersion, that we really do ask people to make an effort to be there live and in person to participate. And we, for the sake of privacy and things, really haven't recorded those classes. We want to really honor what is shared in the moment in those particular days. As you can see on the timeline there, we have all of the dates around the winter term. I will caution to please not wait until January 2nd to make your first payment date. We at Portland Community College just recently have started shutting down the entire college between for the winter term holidays. So between the few days before Christmas up until January 2nd, no one will be available to help you register or help you set up that special payment plan. So I really encourage everyone, for your sake and for my sanity and everyone else's, please take advantage of the time between late November to early December to get registered. That should give you plenty of time to work with a single person who can set up that special payment plan for you, and then also plenty of time to get your books throughout the holiday rush and hassle. We know there can be shipping times take longer at that time of the year, so just enjoy the cushion and start the year with a little bit of ease. So please make sure that you get registered. I will email everyone who registered for this webinar the registration information, but in short, just this evening, you can go to pcc.edu/NC for non-credit and go ahead and apply to PCC. It can take a couple of days for you to receive your student ID. When you do so, make sure that you apply as a non-credit student. That is a shorter pathway to receiving your student ID. And has a few less steps for you to complete there. So once you get your student ID, you are free to register either online through your MyPCC account, or I will put in the chat and also email you a special phone number that you can register over the phone, and you will register using that course registration number, or CRN 14265. With that, I think we are ready to take some questions. So please feel free to add your questions in the chat, or raise your hand and we can call on you. I do see that one question in the chat regarding the recordings asks if alumni have access to the content. We're happy to give you extended access to the content for a month or two, but the recordings are only saved on our server for 120 days. So we don't typically extend access to the class more than a month or two, because you will have lost access to so much of the recorded content, and everything else you will have already had plenty of time to download and have access to. There's a question about what time our class is held on Tuesday. The hours do vary. They consistently start at 5:30 p.m. and then depending on the class, it may end at 7:30, may end at 7:45. We generally try to keep it in that to 2 hours and 15 minutes, with the exception of those seminar days. We want to make sure that you have enough time to really explore that. So for those 2 evenings, it does extend until 8:30. And then the connections and community, we sometimes need to extend those based on number of students and presentations, just to make sure that everyone gets their full time to present. So Laura, please go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you so much, Amy, and thanks everyone. The course sounds amazing. My question was just noting that the course is called Foundations in Interpersonal Neurobiology, which I believe is Dan Siegel's term. And I know like also gets called relational biology, neurobiology by other folks.
Yeah, I mean, Dan is certainly one of the main founders and probably the name associated with it. But there were actually 3 of them that started it. It was Dan Siegel, but it was also Alan Shore and Lou Cozzolino. So the 3 of them are the ones who came into that. And probably the place that the field, if you will, resides is in the Norton series, the series of books, and it's not limited at all to the 3 of them. You have Jaak Painsep's work on emotion, you have the polyvagal theory, so you have a lot of contributing thought leaders in IPNB. I did know that Amy said it's one of the only places you can get IPNB, and I would say probably that's not true in the sense that Dan Siegel teaches a full program on IPNB, obviously, from his perspective. So what you'll see is that IPNB as a framework and a field has really expanded beyond just how Dan brings, his different acronyms to play in the area. And so this program crosses all of those and also uses kind of more that consilient approach to the science. So you're going to see a little bit more in the, the embodiment work, the body work, or a little different take on mindfulness or trauma than you might like from Dan, who was certainly a founding person, and you could say a founding father of it. So yeah.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much.
It's an important distinction. I'm glad you brought it up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'd like to qualify. I did, in referencing that this is one of the only programs, I did add a few extra adjectives there. So feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. But as far as I'm aware, this is the only cohort-based that is live taught. Dan does include some Q&As in the certificate, but most of what is offered through that are pre-recorded lectures. So we've really thoughtfully designed this in a way that lets you engage in real time with the instructors and each other. And we think that that adds some unique value for many learners, not for all. So there are other options out there, but for people that want to learn in community in real time, I think we're the only program that offers that to a variety of professionals. Am I correct with that, Maureen and Lisa, or has somebody else emerged? Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, and we do use Dan Siegel's guide, pocket guide to interpersonal neurobiology. That is one of the required books, as well as Lou Cozzolino's book, so yes, you are correct. Yes.
Okay. Yes, we certainly honor and appreciate many of the thought leaders in the field, and will continue to rely on them. So, any other questions that anyone has this evening? Rachel.
Hi, y'all. Thank you so much for this great overview. My question is kind of similar perhaps to Laura's. I actually completed one of Dan Siegel's 6-week intensives where it was pre-recorded and then Q&A. This sounds amazing. And I think I'm always looking at different interpersonal neurobiology trainings like polyvagal theory and going, oh, I wish I could do all of them. What would you say to someone like me? Would there still be value for me if I've taken kind of a foundational course? I know it's just one slice of the breadth of IPNB. Was happy to hear you talk about polyvagal. I guess I just am curious, how would you help someone like me make a decision of whether or not this is a good investment for a next step?
A great question. Yeah, Lisa, do you want to?
I'm happy to jump in on this one because I will tell you one of my greatest irritations in life is when I invest time and or money into a learning experience and don't get what I'm hoping to get. I find that incredibly awful. So I have always committed that I wouldn't want to ever provide that for somebody nor lead somebody in that direction. And I think that great educational experiences as adults, as learners, it's hard to find. So I took Dan's courses as an initial reviewer, where they didn't charge me anything for it. They sent me stuff and I reviewed and sent my feedback. And I really appreciated the material. And the material is very specific. And I think like Amy referenced, it's Dan's material. And what I really would love to see as folks embrace IPNB is that they're getting a confluence of Dan and other thought leaders in the field, as well as some of the new and emerging discoveries as they happen. And so that's really what I'm hoping for people to get, whether it's our program or other programs that will emerge. I really want to see that people are integrating the multiple viewpoints and perspectives. I think about the conversations we had in class about the vagus nerve. I appreciated that some folks came in with a lot of information, some folks came in with none, some folks have had experiences with Bonnie Badenoch, and other folks who, I think what happens is in the classroom, we get this tapestry of wisdom that people bring in with them. The classroom conversations are the place where we weave all that together. There's a lot of shared wisdom. There's a lot that emerges as we thought partner in the community. And for me, that's what provides a different sort of learning experience. And if that is true for you as well, then this program is probably a better option. If you're in the mood to sit and absorb and think really hard, the videos are going to be a much better option for you. So it really depends on what sort of zone you're in and how you want to relate to this material. Are you looking for more experiential or not? If you're not looking for experiences, this won't be the place. This is a heavy reflection program, a heavy integration program. And that's not right for everybody at this moment. So that I think is one of the decision points for you to make. How limited do you want the scope to be versus how broad and integrative? And what is your preferred mode of learning at this time? That's really going to matter as you make this decision.
Thank you, Lisa. That's very helpful. And Amy, my ears did perk up when you mentioned the cohort piece, because that is one of the challenges of something that's a larger kind of hybrid sit and get, but you get a little bit of Q&A, but you don't have the luxury of working things out and kind of doing the application alongside other folks. So that is very attractive for what y'all have built.
I'm so glad to hear that, Rachel. Thank you. Actually, when the program originally was birthed at Portland State University, and when they were shutting down their program and us taking it over, I interviewed a lot of the students and a lot of the instructors, and one of the common themes that I found were people just were not completing it. They wanted a little bit more connection with each other. They found it in the classes, but then life sometimes gets in the way, and so we've decided to reduce some of the intended redundancy that was part of that program and really consolidate under a cohort model so that everyone is supported and you get to learn together, and the relationships that form for the participants are rich. And I still see emails from some of the cohorts communicating with each other or catching up just on their personal lives or with questions about or excited to share new ways that they've been applying and integrating this. So it's been really exciting to see how that's continued to evolve for everyone over the years. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Laura, I saw that you had your hand raised again. Did you want to ask a question?
Only if no one else is. I'm just aware of the time and wanted to give space for someone else to ask a question if they had one.
Any other questions?
Maybe Tracy did.
Nope, I'm good.
Oh.
Thank you.
Okay, cool. Then my question was, so I'm an anthropologist and I became interested in interpersonal neurobiology just because I really care about polarization and bodies. Yeah, and how we can deal with these things, not just with thoughts, but also as your embodied experience. And I'm so excited about all the things that you have shared tonight. The thing that I'd love to know, do you know any stories of people who've done this course and are using it in, yes, I'm not a therapist, but people who've used it in social justice or environmental justice or anti-racist work, things like that? And you don't need to know, I'm really just being curious.
Maybe Maureen or Lisa can speak more to this. The first person that comes to my mind is actually a law enforcement officer who's focused a lot in domestic violence. And I know that he, such a sweet man, and his focus in taking the program was for his own development and then the application to his work. So probably more on the boots on the ground, tangible application rather than the social justice and the broader cause and change sense. But I know that some of what he shared in the work and how it transformed his work with in the community was really valuable and enriching for everyone.
Very cool.
I can share a quick one also, and I will tell you all, Maureen sends along her regards. Her computer crashed, which is why she left. It wasn't meant to be an experiential exercise in attachment. Might be a little bit of trauma for her. We'll investigate that later on in the program, but she sends along her regards, and I think was very pleased to meet all of you. And I'll share really quick with you, Laura, and with everybody. I was at Portland State when this program began, so I was part of that initial crew. I was doing things with continuing ed. And so I am remembering that somebody who went nearly all the way through the program at that time was working and is still working as a mediator in Multnomah County here. And in the mediation work is a social justice, really known as a bit of a guru in the social justice arena. And it was looking at making certain mediation and court processes more just, and uses IPNB every day of his professional life. To this day, we still have a group of us that meet for coffee and discuss IPNB. And he did this, I believe it was about a decade ago now, a while ago. So he took it just meaning to get CEUs, and look what happened.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing, Lisa. Wonderful. Well, as you can imagine, we could sit and talk about IPNB for hours, days, weeks here. That said, I do want to honor everyone's time this evening, and I know we are a little bit past when we said we would close. So if you do have any other burning questions, please do reach out. I am adding to the chat right now that phone number for registration support if you need. And then I will email and follow up with everyone with a recording of this and with some of the links that I had promised. So we really have enjoyed our time with you. Thank you so much. I hope this has been helpful and that you will join our next cohort. We'd love to see you all in January if this is a way, if this is the right match and we can help you grow in the ways that you would like to. We would love to be a part of your journey.
Thank you, everyone.